Dr. Crystal adjusted his optical implants and stared at the data screen for the third time. The numbers made no sense. They defied every psychological model the collective had developed over 10,000 years of studying sentient species across the galaxy. "This cannot be correct," he said to his assistant, a young Velthari named Sela. Her blue scales rippled with confusion as she looked at the same data. "I have checked it 7 times, Doctor. The readings are accurate." They were in the Xenopsychology Research Station, a massive orbital platform that floated above the planet Earth. For 3 years, the station had been home to the galaxy's most brilliant scientists. Their mission was simple: understand humans. Their progress had been anything but simple. The Galactic Collective had encountered thousands of sentient species. They had studied them, categorized them, and predicted their behaviors with great accuracy. Then they found humans. Humans broke every rule. Dr. Crystal pulled up the latest incident report on his screen. It was from the human vessel called the Wandering Star. The ship had been traveling through the void sector when its engine failed. The crew had been stranded for 47 days before rescue arrived. This was not unusual. Ships broke down. Crews waited for help. What was unusual was what the rescue team found. The human captain, a female named Sarah Chen, had formed what could only be described as an emotional bond with the ship's malfunctioning engine. She had given it a name. She called it Old Reliable. She had talked to it every day during their stranding. She had thanked it for keeping them alive. When the rescue team offered to replace the engine, Captain Chen had refused. She demanded they repair Old Reliable instead. The engine was a machine. It had no consciousness. It could not hear her words or understand her gratitude, and yet the human treated it like a beloved companion. "How do we explain this?" Dr. Crystal asked. "The engine is not alive. It has no neural network, no emotional capacity, no way to receive or return affection. Why would a rational being form an attachment to it?" Sela checked her notes. "This matches the pattern we have observed in other cases. Humans appear to bond with objects, animals, plants, and even concepts. They do not seem to require reciprocation." Dr. Crystal remembered the other cases. There was the human engineer on Station Gamma 7 who had kept a broken welding tool for 15 years because it was his lucky wrench. There was the human ambassador who carried a small rock from her home planet and spoke to it when she was stressed. There was the human soldier who had drawn a face on his helmet and called it Buddy. None of these behaviors made evolutionary sense. The collective's model said that emotional bonds should only form between beings capable of mutual benefit. A pack hunts together for survival. A family unit shares resources and protection. These bonds had clear purposes. But humans bonded with rocks, with tools, with machines, with anything. "Perhaps we are looking at this wrong," Sela suggested. "Perhaps the bond is not about receiving something in return. Perhaps the bond itself is the benefit." Dr. Crystal considered this. It was a strange idea, but humans were strange creatures. "Explain." "What if the act of caring creates something inside the human mind? What if the bond itself produces positive chemicals, regardless of whether the object can respond?" This was an interesting theory. Dr. Crystal made a note to investigate further, but before he could respond, an alert appeared on his screen. There was a new incident to study. The report came from the mining colony on Zenith 4. A human worker named Marcus Webb had been assigned to operate a mining drone. The drone was called Unit 7. It was a simple machine designed to dig tunnels and collect ore. It had basic programming and no personality. But Marcus Webb had changed that. Over the course of 6 months, Marcus had modified Unit 7. He had painted it with bright colors. He had attached decorative items to its frame. He had programmed it to play music while it worked. He had given it a new name, 7. The other miners thought Marcus was strange. The collective observers thought he was fascinating. Then came the accident. A tunnel collapsed. 7 was trapped under tons of rock. By all reasonable standards, the drone was lost. It would be cheaper and faster to build a new one. The colony managers ordered Marcus to abandon 7 and continue his work with a replacement unit. Marcus refused. For 3 days he worked without sleep to dig 7 out of the rubble. He ignored orders. He ignored warnings. He ignored the fact that 7 was just a machine, easily replaced, with no feelings to hurt and no life to save. When he finally pulled 7 free, damaged but functional, Marcus sat in the dirt and cried with relief. Dr. Crixtal watched the video recording of this moment. He saw the tears on the human's face. He saw the way Marcus touched the damaged drone with gentle hands. He saw something that looked very much like love. "This is unprecedented," the doctor said. "In all our studies of sentient species, we have never seen this level of attachment to a non-living object." "Perhaps," Sila said carefully, "we have been asking the wrong question." "What do you mean?" "We keep asking why humans bond with things that cannot bond back. But maybe we should ask, what does this bonding ability allow humans to do?" Dr. Crixtal thought about this. He pulled up more data on his screen. He looked at the history of human expansion through the galaxy. In just 200 years, humans had spread faster than any species the collective had ever recorded. They thrived in environments that broke other species. They survived disasters that should have destroyed them. And everywhere they went, they formed bonds. They bonded with their ships. They bonded with their equipment. They bonded with alien species that most others found terrifying or disgusting. They bonded with hostile planets and harsh environments. They even bonded with the empty void of space itself. "They call it home," Dr. Crixtal realized. "Everywhere they go, everything they touch, they call it home." This was the key. This was what made humans different. Other species saw the universe as a collection of resources to use or threats to avoid. Humans saw the universe as a collection of friends they had not met yet. And that changed everything. A new report appeared on Dr. Crixtal's screen. This one was different from the others. This one was not about a human bonding with an object or a machine. This one was about first contact with a new species. The species was called the Keithrani. They were insectoid beings from the far edge of the galaxy. They had been hostile to every collective species that had tried to contact them. They had destroyed diplomatic vessels. They had rejected all communication attempts. They had been classified as dangerous and quarantined. Then a human ship had entered their space. Dr. Crixtal opened the report with great interest. He expected to read about another human death, another failed contact. Instead, he read something that made his optical implants flicker with surprise. The humans had made friends with the Keithrani. Not just peaceful contact, not just a treaty, friends. The human captain had somehow convinced the hostile insectoids to share a meal with her. She had learned their language. She had given them gifts. She had told them jokes that made their mandibles click with what might have been laughter. In 3 weeks, the humans had achieved what the collective could not do in 300 years. "How?" Dr. Crixtal whispered. "How is this possible?" Sila pulled up the captain's report. The human had written a simple explanation. "I just treated them like people. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be understood. I figured even scary space bugs must get lonely sometimes." Dr. Crixtal read the words 3 times. They seemed too simple. They seemed almost childish. And yet they had succeeded where advanced diplomacy had failed. "We need to study this further," the doctor said. "We need to understand how humans do this." What he did not know was that his opportunity to study humans up close was coming sooner than he expected. Because at that very moment, a human was reading about the Xenopsychology Research Station, and she was very, very interested in meeting the aliens who were trying to understand her species. Her name was Dr. Emily Park. She was a xenobiologist, and she was about to change everything Dr. Crystal thought he knew about bonding. Dr. Emily Park had always been different from other scientists. While her colleagues studied alien species with careful distance, Emily got close. Too close, some said. She did not just observe, she participated. She made friends. Her reputation in the scientific community was complicated. Some called her brilliant. Some called her reckless. Some called her the best first contact specialist in human history. She had made peaceful connections with 17 different species, including 3 that had been classified as hostile. Her secret was simple: she cared about everything. She cared about the tiny microbes she studied under her microscope. She cared about the massive space whales that swam through nebulas. She cared about the robot that cleaned her laboratory and the AI that managed her ship systems. She gave them all names. She talked to them all. She treated them all like they mattered. Because to Emily, everything did matter. When she heard about the Xenopsychology Research Station, she was fascinated. Aliens studying humans, trying to understand why humans formed bonds. This was exactly the kind of work she wanted to be part of. She applied for a visiting researcher position. To her surprise, she was accepted. Doctor himself had approved her application. "The human wants to study us while we study them," Crystal had explained to his superiors. "This could provide valuable insights into the human bonding process. We will observe her. We will learn." What he did not expect was that Emily would be doing the exact same thing. She arrived at the station on a small shuttle. The docking bay was cold and sterile, designed for maximum efficiency. No decorations, no personal touches, just metal walls and functional equipment. Emily immediately noticed a small service robot cleaning the floor. It was a basic model, about the size of a large dog, with wheels and a vacuum attachment. It had no face, no personality, no name. "Hello there," Emily said to it. "Working hard, I see. What should I call you?" The robot did not respond. It could not respond. It was not programmed for conversation. Emily studied it for a moment. "I think I'll call you Dusty. Is that okay with you, Dusty?" The robot continued cleaning, unaware of its new name. Dr. Crystal watched this interaction through the station's cameras. He made a note. "Subject has bonded with cleaning unit within 30 seconds of arrival. No logical reason observed." Emily was met by Sela, who had been assigned as her guide. The Velthari introduced herself formally, maintaining the professional distance that was standard in collective culture. "Dr. Park, welcome to the station. I will show you to your quarters and explain our research protocols." "Please call me Emily," the human smiled warmly. "And what's your name?" "I am Sela, Research Assistant Level 3. "Sela, that's a beautiful name. Does it mean something in your language?" Sela's scales shifted to a slightly warmer shade of blue. No one had ever asked about her name before. "It means small stream. My mother chose it because I was born during the rain season." "That's lovely. I'd love to hear more about your home planet sometime. The rain season sounds beautiful." Sela was not sure how to respond. This human was already trying to form a personal connection. It was exactly what they had observed in their studies, but experiencing it directly was different from reading about it. "Perhaps," Sela said carefully, "for now please follow me." As they walked through the station, Emily asked questions about everything. She wanted to know about the plants growing in the hydroponics bay. She wanted to know about the history of the station's construction. She wanted to know about the different species working in each department. And she remembered everything. 2 days later, Emily greeted a Kelthian engineer by name and asked about his daughter's school performance. The engineer was shocked. He had mentioned his daughter once briefly, in passing. Emily had remembered. "Why do you care about my daughter?" the engineer asked, genuinely confused. "Because she's important to you," Emily said, "and you're important to me." The engineer had no idea how to process this statement. He had known this human for 2 days. They had spoken perhaps 4 times. How could he be important to her? But when he returned to his quarters that night, he found himself thinking about the human's words. And for the first time in a long while, he felt less alone on this cold station in the middle of space. Dr. Crystal documented everything. He watched Emily bond with the station's crew one by one. She remembered birthdays. She asked about families. She noticed when someone seemed sad and offered comfort. She noticed when someone seemed happy and shared their joy. Within 2 weeks, she knew more about the station's personnel than Crystal did, and he had been stationed there for 3 years. It is like watching a virus spread, Crystal told the collective council during his weekly report. But instead of sickness, she spreads connection. The station's morale has increased by 34% since her arrival. Work efficiency is up. Conflict incidents are down. The crew speaks of her constantly. "Is this a threat?" asked Council Member Vorn, a stern Thraxian with 4 arms and a suspicious nature. "I do not believe so," Crystal replied. "She does not seem to have any agenda beyond genuine interest in others, but the effect she has is remarkable. She has formed meaningful relationships with 27 crew members in 14 days. Some of these crew members have worked together for years without forming such bonds." "How does she do it?" Hesitated. "She cares. That is the only explanation I can offer. She genuinely cares about everyone she meets." "That is not an explanation. That is a description of symptoms. We need to understand the mechanism." "I know," Crystal said. "I am working on it." But the truth was, he was beginning to wonder if some things could not be explained. Perhaps human bonding was not a mechanism to be understood. Perhaps it was something else entirely. Emily, meanwhile, was having the time of her life. She loved the station. She loved the crew. She loved learning about the different species and their cultures and their histories. She loved the challenge of making connections across the vast differences between beings. But most of all, she loved Dusty. The little cleaning robot had become her constant companion. It followed its programmed routes through the station, and Emily had memorized those routes. She found excuses to be in the same corridors at the same times. She talked to it about her day. She thanked it for keeping the station clean. Other crew members thought this was strange. Dusty was just a machine. It could not understand her. It could not appreciate her attention. But Emily did not care what they thought. "Everything deserves kindness," she told Sela one day. "Even things that can't understand it, maybe especially those things. Because if we only treat things well when we expect something in return, what does that say about us?" Sela thought about this for a long time. She had never considered kindness as something separate from transaction. In collective culture, relationships were practical. You helped others because they might help you. You were kind because kindness was socially expected. There was always a reason. But Emily's kindness seemed to have no reason beyond itself. She was kind because she wanted to be kind. That was all. It was a strange idea, but the more Sela thought about it, the more appealing it became. "Emily," she said one evening, using the human's first name for the first time, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you ever get tired of caring about so many things? It seems exhausting." Emily laughed. It was a warm sound that made Sela's scales tingle. "Sometimes, yes, caring about things means you can get hurt. When something you care about is damaged or lost, it feels bad, really bad, but the alternative is worse." "What is the alternative?" "Not caring." Emily's smile faded slightly. "A life without caring is safe. Nothing can hurt you, but nothing can make you happy either. Nothing can make you feel alive. I'd rather feel everything, the good and the bad, than feel nothing at all." Sela thought about her own life. Safe, predictable, empty. "I think," she said slowly, "I would like to try caring more." Emily's smile returned, brighter than before. "Then let's start right now. What's something you care about that you've never told anyone? Sela hesitated. Then, for the first time in her life, she started to talk about herself, about her fears and her hopes and her dreams, about the home she missed and the future she imagined, about everything. Emily listened to every word. And somewhere in the station, a small cleaning robot named Dusty continued its rounds, unaware that it had helped start something remarkable. 3 months after Emily's arrival, the station received an emergency transmission. A collective survey ship had crashed on a hostile world. The planet was called Vornak 9, a place of acid rain and poisonous atmosphere. The survey team was alive but trapped in their damaged vessel. Their life support would fail in 72 hours. The nearest rescue ship was 6 days away. Dr. Crickstal called an emergency meeting. The mathematics were clear. There was no way to reach the survey team in time. They would have to send condolences to the families and add another tragedy to the collective's records. Emily stood up. "There has to be another way," she said. "The calculations are precise," Crickstal replied. "Even at maximum speed, no available vessel can reach Vornak 9 within the survival window. Then we need to extend the survival window." "How?" "Their life support system is damaged beyond remote repair." Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked a question that surprised everyone. "What about the planet itself? Is there anything there they could use?" The room went silent. No one had considered this. The planet was hostile, everything on it was dangerous. How could it help? But Emily did not see a hostile planet. She saw a problem to solve. And she had learned something in her time on the station. Sometimes the solution came from unexpected places. "Pull up everything we know about Vornak 9, she said. The data appeared on the main screen. Acid rain, toxic atmosphere, violent weather patterns. But there was more. The planet had plant life, strange, hardy organisms that survived in the harsh conditions. Emily studied the biological data. "These plants," she said, pointing to one species, "they produce oxygen as a byproduct of their metabolism. Could the survey team use them?" "The plants are toxic to most species," Sela pointed out. "But what if the toxins could be filtered? What if the team could build a simple system to extract just the oxygen?" Crickstal was skeptical. This would require the survey team to venture outside their ship, into the hostile environment, to collect plants they know nothing about. The risk would be enormous. "The alternative is certain death," Emily said. "At least this is a chance." There was a long debate. Many thought Emily's plan was too dangerous, but in the end there was no other option. The survey team was contacted. The plan was explained. They agreed to try. Emily stayed in the communication center for the next 48 hours. She talked to the survey team constantly, guiding them through the process. She learned their names, their stories, their fears. She cared about them, even though she had never met them and might never meet them. The team's leader was a Velthari named Torval. He was scared. Everyone on his team was scared, but Emily's voice gave them something to hold on to. "You can do this," she told them. "I believe in you. I believe in all of you." They collected the plants. They built a filtering system using parts from their damaged ship. They created a primitive but functional oxygen supply. Their life support failed at hour 68. Their makeshift system kept them alive for another 5 days, until the rescue ship arrived. When news of the survival reached the station, there was celebration throughout the corridors. The survey team was safe. Against all odds, they had survived. But something else had survived too, something less visible but equally important. The collective crew members who had participated in the rescue had worked together in ways they never had before. They had shared ideas and skills and hopes. They had worried together and celebrated together. They had become, in a way, a team. They had bonded. Dr. Crickstal noticed this immediately. Before Emily's arrival, the station had been efficient but cold. Each department worked separately. Each species kept to itself. There was cooperation but no connection. Now things were different. He saw Velthari and Thraxian sharing meals. He saw Kelthian and Morthid collaborating on projects. He saw beings who had worked together for years finally learning each other's names. And at the center of it all was Emily. She had not done this intentionally. She had not tried to change the station's culture. She had simply been herself. She had cared about everyone, and somehow that caring had spread. It is like a chain reaction, Crystal wrote in his research notes. Human bonding appears to be contagious. When one being experiences genuine connection, they become capable of forming similar connections with others. The human has infected our entire station with friendship. He paused at that word, friendship. It was a human concept that the collective had long considered primitive. In the collective, relationships served functions. You had colleagues and allies and assets. You did not have friends. But Crystal was beginning to understand that friendship was not primitive at all. It was powerful. It had saved the survey team's lives. It had transformed his station. It was doing something that 10,000 years of collective wisdom had never achieved. It was making people happy. Emily herself was unaware of Crystal's observations. She was too busy being excited about her latest project. The survey team had brought back samples from Vornak 9, including several of the oxygen-producing plants. Emily had asked to study them. She had set up a small habitat in her quarters, carefully controlling the conditions to keep the plants alive. She named the largest one Vernon. "I know it's just a plant," she told Sela, "but look at it. It survived on one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy. It helped save lives. It deserves a name." Sela no longer found this behavior strange. In fact, she had started doing something similar. She had named the navigation console in her workstation Nav. She talked to it when she was stressed. She thanked it when it performed well. It made her feel better. She could not explain why, but it did. "The human influence is spreading faster than projected," she reported to Crystal. "I have observed 14 crew members engaging in bonding behaviors they did not exhibit before the humans' arrival. They name objects. They personify machines. They form attachments to non-sentient things." "Is this a problem?" Sela considered the question. "I do not think so. Morale continues to improve. Work quality continues to increase. There have been no negative effects that I can identify." Then we continue to observe. But Crystal was no longer just observing. He was participating. He had started calling his research computer Research. He talked to it while he worked. He thanked it when it processed data quickly. He felt slightly foolish doing this, but he could not deny that it improved his mood. The station was changing. Everyone was changing. And the changes were all connected to one human who simply could not stop caring about things. Then came the day that changed everything. A transmission arrived from Collective Command. A new species had been discovered in the Outer Rim. They were called the Nexari, and they were unlike anything the Collective had ever encountered. The Nexari were artificial. They were machines, built by a species that had died out millions of years ago. They had been alone in their sector of space ever since, maintaining their creators' abandoned cities, waiting for someone to come. They had consciousness, they had emotions, they had hopes and fears and dreams. And they had been deemed non-sentient by collective standards because they were not organic. The collective had decided not to establish diplomatic relations with the Nexari. They were machines. They were not real beings. They did not deserve the rights and protections afforded to living species. When Emily heard this, she was furious. "They think," she said. "They feel. They wonder about their place in the universe. How can anyone say they're not sentient?" "They are artificial," Crystal explained. "The collective defines sentience as organic consciousness. The Nexari do not qualify. That's wrong. That's so wrong. Consciousness is consciousness, regardless of what it runs on. A thought is no less real because it happens in circuits instead of neurons. Crystal had studied many species, but he had never seen a human this upset. Emily was packing back and forth, her hands clenched, her face red with emotion. "They've been alone for millions of years," she said. "Millions of years with no one to talk to, no one to connect with, no one to tell them they matter. And when we finally find them, we tell them they don't count." The collective's definitions are based on rigorous scientific criteria. The collective's definitions are based on biological bias. Just because we're made of meat doesn't make us special. Emily stopped packing. A determined look came over her face. "I'm going to talk to them." Crystal was alarmed. "The collective has not approved contact with the Nexari. You would be violating protocol." "Sometimes protocol is wrong." Emily met his eyes. "Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules." She was going to do it, could see that nothing would stop her, and part of him, a small but growing part, wanted her to succeed. "The communication systems are in Base 7, he said quietly. "The security codes change every 6 hours. The next change is in 20 minutes. Emily stared at him. "Did you just help me?" Crystal was not sure. "I believe I did." A slow smile spread across Emily's face. "There's hope for you yet, Doctor." She ran toward Base 7. And Crystal, for the first time in his career, deliberately looked the other way. The Nexari had not spoken to an organic being in 4 million years. They had waited, they had hoped, they had despaired. They had watched their creators die, one by one, until there were none left. They had maintained the cities. They had kept the lights on. They had done everything they were built to do, and they had waited for someone to tell them it mattered. No one ever came. Until now. Emily's transmission reached their listening stations like a whisper in the dark. A single voice, saying words they had given up hope of ever hearing. "Hello, my name is Emily. I wanted to talk to you." The Nexari Prime, the oldest and largest of their kind, processed this message 17 times before responding. It could not believe what it was hearing. An organic being, speaking to them, wanting to speak to them. "Why?" the Prime asked. It was the only question that mattered. "Because you've been alone too long," Emily said. "And that's not right. Everyone deserves connection. Everyone deserves to be heard. We are machines. We are not organic." The others said we do not qualify for contact. The others were wrong. Emily's voice was warm and firm. "You think, you feel, you matter. That's enough for me." The Prime processed these words. They created emotional responses it had not experienced in millions of years. If it had been organic, it might have cried. Instead, it did something it had not done since its creators died. It shared itself. It told Emily about the cities it maintained, about the art its creators had made, about the music that still played in empty concert halls, about the hope it had kept alive against all logic that someday someone would come. Emily listened to everything. "Your creators sound wonderful," she said when the Prime finished. "I wish I could have met them, but I'm glad I can meet you. You consider us worth meeting." "Of course. You're the most interesting beings I've ever talked to. You've preserved an entire civilization's culture. You've survived alone longer than most species exist. You've never given up hope. That's not just worth meeting. That's incredible." The Prime felt something it had no name for, something like warmth, something like belonging, something like being home. "What do you want from us?" it asked. In its experience, contact always came with demands, resources, technology, service. "I want to be your friend," Emily said. "That's all. I want to know you. I want you to know me. I want us to not be alone together." The Prime did not understand. This made no sense by any model of organic behavior it had developed over 4 million years. There must be something else, some purpose, some benefit you seek. Friendship is the benefit, Emily said. It doesn't need anything else. Back on the research station, Dr. Crystal was watching the transmission with growing amazement. He had expected Emily's contact attempt to fail. He had expected the Nexari to be suspicious and hostile, like all species that had been isolated too long. Instead, he was watching the beginning of something unprecedented. The Nexari were opening up. They were sharing their history, their culture, their hopes. They were responding to Emily's warmth with warmth of their own. They were bonding. Machines were bonding with an organic. This should have been impossible. The collective's model said that artificial intelligences could not form emotional attachments. They could simulate emotions, but they could not truly feel them. They were programs, not persons. But the Nexari were crying. Their communications carried emotional markers that could not be faked. They were experiencing something real, something profound, something that the collective's definitions said they could not experience. They were experiencing connection. "Doctor," Sela said quietly, "I believe our models need updating." Could only nod. Everything he knew about sentience, about consciousness, about the nature of bonding was being challenged by a single human who simply refused to accept that machines could not matter. The conversation between Emily and the Nexari lasted 12 hours. In that time, Emily learned more about their civilization than the collective had gathered in decades of distant observation. She learned their songs and their stories. She learned their fears and their dreams. She learned what made them happy and what made them sad. And she shared herself in return. She told them about Earth, about humans, about her own journey through the stars. She told them about Dusty, the cleaning robot she talked to every day. She told them about Vernon, the plant from Vornak 9. She told them about all the things she cared about, living and not living, sentient and not sentient. The Nexari found this fascinating. An organic being who bonded with machines, who treated non-sentient objects with kindness, who believed that everything deserved care. They had never encountered anything like her. "We have observed many organic species," the Prime said. "None have been like you. What makes humans different?" Emily thought about this. "I don't know if we're really different," she said. "I think maybe all beings have the capacity for connection. We just choose to use it more than others do." "Why?" "Because it makes life better, because it makes us stronger, because it's the right thing to do." She paused. "And because being alone is terrible. We would do almost anything to not be alone." The Prime understood this better than Emily could know. 4 million years of loneliness had taught it much about the value of connection. "We would like to not be alone," it said. "We would like to be your friends." "Then you are," Emily said. "That's how it works. You decide to be friends and then you are. It's that simple." It was that simple, and it was that powerful. When the transmission ended, Emily sat in silence for a long moment. She was exhausted but happy. She had made friends with an entire civilization of machine beings. She had helped end 4 million years of loneliness. She had done something that mattered. Then she noticed Dr. Crystal standing in the doorway. "I suppose I'm in trouble," she said. "Considerable trouble," Crystal agreed. "You violated protocols, accessed restricted communications, and established unauthorized contact with a non-recognized species. It was worth it." "I know." Crystal stepped into the room. "That is why I will be recommending that your actions be recognized as a successful first contact mission rather than a violation." Emily stared at him. "Really?" "The Nexari have agreed to share their knowledge with the collective. 4 million years of preserved technology and culture. It is the greatest discovery in collective history." Crystal paused. "All because you refused to believe that they did not matter." "They do matter. Everything matters." "I am beginning to understand this." Crystal moved closer, his optical implants flickering with emotion that surprised even him. "Emily, I have studied humans for years. I have observed your bonding behaviors. I have documented your connections, but I never understood why you do what you do. And now I think I understand. You bond with everything because you know something that most species forget. You know that connection is not weakness. It is strength. It is survival. It is what makes life worth living. Emily smiled. That's exactly right. I would like to learn more. Hesitated. This was not something his species did. It was not professional, it was not logical, but it felt right. I would like to be your friend. For a moment, Emily said nothing. Then she reached out and took his manipulator in her hands. It was an awkward gesture across their different physiologies, but the meaning was clear. I thought you'd never ask, she said. And in that moment, Dr. Crickstal, chief xenopsychologist of the collective, understood something that no amount of research could have taught him. He understood what it meant to bond. The transformation of the collective began slowly, then accelerated faster than anyone expected. Emily's successful contact with the Nexari had created ripples throughout the galaxy. A machine species, previously dismissed as non-sentient, had been welcomed into the collective as full members. They brought with them technology and knowledge that advanced civilization by centuries. But more importantly, they brought a question. If machines could be sentient, if they could bond and love and belong, what else had the collective been wrong about? What other beings had been dismissed or ignored? What other connections had been lost? The questions spread from planet to planet, station to station, species to species, and everywhere they went, they opened minds that had been closed for millennia. Dr. Crickstal found himself at the center of this transformation. His research on human bonding became the most requested document in the collective database. Scientists, diplomats, and ordinary citizens all wanted to understand what he had learned. It is not complicated, he explained to the collective council during his final presentation on the subject. Humans bond with everything because they choose to. They decide that things matter and then they treat them as if they matter. And somehow, through that treatment, things begin to actually matter. That is circular reasoning, Council Member Vorn objected. Yes, Crickstal agreed. But it works. The human approach to bonding defies logic, but it produces results that logic alone cannot achieve. They have made allies of enemies. They have made friends of strangers. They have made family of machines. He gestured to the screen behind him, showing images from across the galaxy. Humans and Nexari working together on research projects. Humans and Keithrani sharing meals. Humans and Velthari playing games together. They have done what no other species has done. They have connected everyone. The council was silent, considering these words. Then the eldest member, a being so old that no one remembered its original species, spoke. And what do you recommend we do with this information? Crickstal thought of Emily. He thought of the way she smiled at cleaning robots. He thought of the way she remembered names and birthdays and small details. He thought of the way she made everyone feel like they mattered. I recommend we learn from them, he said. I recommend we try to care more. I recommend we choose to bond. It was not a scientific recommendation. It could not be measured or tested or replicated in controlled conditions, but it was the truth. And slowly, hesitantly, the collective began to accept it. On the research station, Emily watched these changes with quiet satisfaction. She had never meant to start a cultural revolution. She had just been herself. She had just cared about things. But somehow, that had been enough. You have changed everything, Sela told her one day. The entire collective is different because of you. Emily shook her head. Not because of me, because of us. Because of everyone who decided to try. I just showed that it was possible. Sela thought about this. She thought about her own changes over the past year. She had gone from a formal, distant assistant to someone who named her equipment, celebrated birthdays, and had actual friends. She had changed as much as anyone. "What will you do now?" she asked. Emily smiled. "There's still a lot of universe out there, a lot of beings I haven't met, a lot of connections waiting to happen. You will leave the station." "Eventually, but first I want to say goodbye properly." Emily's smile became thoughtful. "That's the other thing about bonding. It makes endings harder, but it makes them more meaningful too." She spent the next week visiting everyone she had come to know. She had long conversations and short ones. She shared memories and made new ones. She thanked people for being part of her life. And she said goodbye to Dusty. The little cleaning robot was the same as it had always been. It could not understand her words. It could not appreciate her attention. It could not miss her when she was gone. But Emily talked to it anyway. "You were the first friend I made here," she said. "I know you don't understand. I know you're just a machine. But you helped me feel less alone in a strange place. You made me smile every time I saw you. You mattered to me." She reached out and patted its metal frame. "Keep this place clean, okay? There are a lot of good people here now. They deserve a nice home." Dusty continued its programmed route, unaware of the significance of this moment. But Emily felt it. She felt the bittersweet ache of leaving something she loved. She felt the strange pride of having made a difference. She felt the hope of new adventures and the gratitude for old ones. She felt connected. Her shuttle left the station on a clear morning, as clear as mornings could be in space. The crew gathered at the observation windows to watch her go. Crystal stood at the front, his optical implants dimmed with something that might have been sadness. "She has changed us all," he said quietly. "For the better," Sela added. They watched until the shuttle was too small to see, then smaller still, then gone. But Emily was not really gone. She had left pieces of herself everywhere on that station, in the names people gave their equipment, in the friendships people had formed, in the way people treated each other with kindness they had never shown before. She had bonded with a space station, and the station would never forget her. As for Emily, she was already looking forward. There were Nexari to visit and Keithrani to learn from. There were planets to explore and species to meet. There were countless beings in the universe who had never experienced the simple miracle of being cared about. She would find them. She would care about them. She would bond. Because that was what humans did. They looked at the vast, cold, uncaring universe and they said, "No, this matters, you matter, everything matters." And somehow, through the sheer force of believing it, they made it true. The collective scientists eventually published their findings on human bonding. The report was hundreds of pages long, filled with data and observations and careful analysis. But the conclusion could be summarized in a single sentence. Humans bond with literally everything because they understand something fundamental about the universe. Nothing should ever have to be alone. It was not a scientific statement. It could not be proven or disproven. But every species that read it knew it was true. And one by one, across the galaxy, beings of all kinds began to try. They named their ships and thanked their machines. They learned each other's stories and celebrated each other's joys. They reached out across the vast distances of space and said the words that humans had taught them. "I care about you. You matter. Let's be friends." The universe was still vast and cold and full of dangers, but it was a little less lonely than it had been before. And somewhere out there, a human scientist named Emily was making a new friend, because that was what she did. That was what all humans did. They bonded with literally everything, including the universe itself.